So how was your week?
It was good. It was good. Just worked, but it was the fun kind of work, so can't complain.
All right. Well, that doesn't ever stop us, does it?
No, it does not.
Let's see. Okay, we are still recording. That's good. Um, I every once in a while, when I'm working with Canvas, extra buttons and things show up that I have no idea what they're for, and sometimes I hit the wrong thing. But it looks like we're still recording. Everything is good. So, how many other classes are you taking with UVU this term?
So I did three the first block, and then I just did this one the second block. So this is the only one I've got.
Block classes are ruthless, aren't they?
Yeah, I like them though, because then you can just kind of just cruise through them. But they take some work.
Yeah, I remember doing a lot of my drawing and painting classes as block classes because I thought, oh, no problem, I'll get through them faster. But that's like it felt like no, it was over 8 hours a day in a studio trying to get everything done.
Yeah.
That and then with night classes too, yeah, it's ruthless, but it's nice to have it done with. Uh, um, there were there are a couple of things I wanted to talk about that I've noticed in quizzes and stuff, and this is not specifically for you. This is just as general observations. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the final. And I wanted to do just put up a little bit of discussion on the ready-mades because I've been really favorably impressed by how people have thought through ready-mades. Um, have you done yours?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, because we'll talk about that in just a little bit. First, I don't know if it is still on, and I don't know how easy it is for people to find. But have you seen the SRI thing in your? I don't even know if it's on your to-do list.
I'll go check and see if it's on there, but I haven't seen it.
Okay, because the student rating thing, that's something for everybody, and I don't even know if people can still do it. I do offer extra credit in other things, and if you do the SRI, you do get extra credit for that too. And I think what I may do if is send everybody a link to that if I can find it. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it.
Okay, let me because it isn't in any of the modules, and it should. I think it should probably be in the final module. But if you it's too late to access it anyway, then maybe that doesn't matter.
I thought it was like 2 extra days after the term that you could do those. Maybe that's changed, but I thought it was that there'd still be
I
time.
thought so too, and it's not something that I usually think of. It's not something that I usually think of until it's too late to do anything. Let's see. It is published, but it doesn't look like it's published in any actual module.
Hmm.
So I'm scowling because I'm trying to figure this out. You don't get any points for doing it, but you do get an increase in overall points. And I think it's an additional, let's see, what did I say? It's a 3% increase in your overall grade.
Ooh.
So let's see if I can get to it. I have found it. Now I just need to put it into a module. Okay. And let's see how this does. See if we do this. So it is published. It is online. And let's see. to this. There we go. All right. Now, could you go, and it should be on the home page with all the modules and everything.
Under
If you
final,
open
yeah,
it,
under final
yep,
assignment, student SRI.
yeah, yeah. And then it shows that so that you don't get um, any points for the assignment itself, but by doing it, then I knock up your whole grade, pretty much like a half letter grade.
Sweet.
So, and a couple of people did actually find it, and I don't know how they found it. It was published, but I did not put it. I had screwed up and not put it under anything. Okay, but yeah, if you can, Tanner, sometime today, open that up, see if you can get to it and do it, and then let me know if you can do it.
Okay.
Yeah, and just let me know because then it will be valid.
Okay.
All right, that was one thing. Now, looking at the quizzes, what I was finding out is that a lot of people were missing points because they misspelled the color schemes. Like one of the most common misspellings is in the quiz, one of the color schemes is complementary. And it's not compliment like you tell somebody they've done a great job or bless their hearts, they've tried. Um, it's compliment spelled with COMPLE, which means standing. It means instead of good thing you say to somebody, it means standing next to somebody. And I've caught that, and I give them points for that. But misspelling is the most common in that quiz. Misspelling is the most common reason for people to miss points on those questions. Another thing I'm noticing is that people are confusing monochromatic and achromatic. What's the difference? Do you know? Oh, hey, Mallory. I'm sorry I didn't see you come on there until just now. Do you know what the difference between monochromatic and achromatic is?
Isn't achromatic? It's like without color, but monochromatic, it's
Right.
like one color, but it can be any color.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So monochromatic would be black, white, and shades of gray. Achromatic would be a bunch of different objects that are the same color of blue or red or whatever. So yeah, so that's the big difference there. And then another one that I noticed that people are getting questions or getting wrong is on the natural or applied color. There's an image of the base of a tree that Andy Goldsworthy did, where he colored the base of the tree with leaves. And that one, I think we can argue, could be applied color because he's painting essentially with leaves that he found, but it could also be natural color. And so anybody that got that wrong, I gave it to him anyway, because I think it could be either one. So if you've already taken the quiz and you got perfect points, great. If not, and you're missing a couple, look at the comments, look at what you missed. And the most common one is, hey, Mallory, can you hear us?
I can now.
Okay, excellent. So the most common thing missed, I think, was that and then misspelling the color schemes. So applied and natural color and then misspelling the color schemes. Okay, Mallory, did you get any of what I was talking about with the SRI, the student rating thing? Okay.
I don't know if you can. I can. Hold on.
Well, when she makes it back, I'll go over that again.
Sounds good.
Is it just a connection issue?
Yeah, I can hear you again now, but I can hear you for a minute and then it like stops. So I took my headphones off. Hopefully that will make it work better.
Okay. What I was just mentioning was that the SRI, the student rating, whatever I stands for in that, that thing is you get extra credit for doing it. And Tana reminded me about it somehow. Somebody else had done it and we couldn't find it anywhere in your assignment list. So, but it is now attached to the module that's labeled final. And if you complete that, then you get 3% added to your overall grade.
Okay, awesome.
So do that if you can. If it's closed already, let me know and we'll figure out something else to do. But then and the things I wanted to talk about today is discussion on ready-mades, talking about the final, and just see how you guys are doing overall in the class. Did you, both of you, open up the little final thing and see those 4 questions?
I have
I
it.
did.
Okay. I wanted to go over the questions really quick, and we don't have to do the full thing, but I'd like either one of you to respond. You know, if you are so inclined, you know, respond to, since there's 2 of you, Mallory, you single-handedly doubled attendance by showing up.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I know. It's just a gift. But each of you can just answer, you know, quickly, just for your reflections on 2 of the questions, and then it will help you when you get to the final. But I'm going to share the
It's called
page.
your final assignment.
Yep. And there, I just want you guys to write 50 words on each of these 4 questions. And it's kind of, it looks simple, but it's really helps me to hear what you're doing. And I love when I hear about your greatest challenge and your greatest success. I love hearing that because that has really helped future classes. When we do the in-person class, one of the things we do is build a wooden cradle or base for this overall sculpture. And there were several people that said they were terrified of using woodshop tools. And that was the one thing that they were willing to get a 0 on because they just didn't want to deal with it. But I took people to the wood shop. We went through each week. We did a different group of people, and it was the greatest challenge. But they were amazed at being able to complete it. Nobody lost, you know, nobody got hurt or anything like that, and everybody did great. But so, from one of you, who would like to talk about what was your greatest challenge in the course?
I can go. I'm not sure if this will count. Mine was kind of like burnout. I just felt because it's with this and then what I do for work is very artistic. So it felt like a lot. So I think that would have been my greatest challenge, was just trying to stay consistent with it and not get
Right.
burnt out.
That is that's a really terrible challenge. Yes, you know, especially if you're doing this professionally, it is really hard to sidestep burnout. And it's not, I don't know of anybody who has ever been able to completely avoid it. Most people that I know that are professional artists, they have burnout, but they step back, step away for a bit, do something completely different, and that allows them to recharge enough so they can go back. So that is a significant challenge, very much. Mallory, could you share your greatest success so far during the term?
I took this course last year and
Okay.
failed. Not because of anything you did. I think this is a very passable class. But I think for me, my greatest success is making it further than I did last year, which isn't relevant to probably everybody, but yeah.
Well, that can be a significant challenge too. And I really appreciate that because especially as a block class, this is a challenging class, definitely. So the fact that you're able to get a lot farther, it says a lot. I mean, it speaks quite a bit to your own integrity and work ethic, definitely. So excellent, very good. Now the next two questions are, which project or process gave you the greatest surprise and why? And it can be a technique you learned about, a project you did, or any other aspect of the class. What was the greatest surprise and why? How was it a surprise? And then the other question, the last question is, which one principle can you take from the class and use in your future career? So who wants to talk about the biggest surprise?
So for me, when I did the wire sculpture last year, I cut the sculpture, like cut each wire and then twisted it. And I tried doing that again this year because I think I misunderstood. I thought that's how you were supposed to do it. Maybe it was, but it was so much harder to get it to be like a sturdy, stable thing. And so my husband was like, why don't you just do like one continuous wire as long as you can? And I think that's what we were supposed to do. Anyways, that's what I ended up doing, and it made it a lot um, more like stable, and it was just easier in general to do that. So that was a surprise that I think you probably explained that like a million times, and I just wasn't picking up. And there was videos and everything, but anyways, so second time around, it was more successful, I think.
All right, excellent, very good. Tanner, that's really good. When you can sometimes when you revisit a project and look at it a little bit differently, that different perspective is what you need to find the success. So good. Tanner, what one principle will you take from this class and be able to apply for your future life?
If this doesn't count, let me know and I can do another one. But I was thinking like variety, kind of like what you were saying with like the burnout, where it's like just do something else. Because this isn't the first time I've faced burnout. It's like it's happened before, but it's definitely useful to be able to turn to something else to like still express yourself creatively, but in a way that isn't a hindrance, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think sometimes if you're working in a particular medium or you're working with a particular style or a specific design element, or excuse me, design um, approach, sometimes it really helps to do something different, completely different. Uh, for a while in my burnout, I thought, well, I'm going to try cooking. And thankfully, my wife has a really, I mean, she can keep anything down. So that was nice for me. But it allowed me to still produce something without asking all the questions that I perpetually ask myself. So I think that's a really good observation. One thing that I get a lot with this question too is a lot of people see a lot of different ways to apply those four tools of artistic critique. One of the things that I like to ask sometimes on the finals is there something that you have seen that you've hated, that when you took the time to apply the four tools of artistic critique, your mind was completely changed regarding it? Is that something that either of you have experienced?
Sort of. I feel like my like opinion on the piece didn't completely change, but I was able to appreciate it more. It was with like the Mona Lisa. I just thought it was just the most overrated thing ever, and I still do. So that's why I'm saying it doesn't really change that, but I can appreciate what like it accomplished and like what the artist was able to do. But yeah, I still think it's a overrated piece.
Well, I think that that's really important because as we apply the tools of artistic critique, then we can see how things are fit into their own context and fit into their own time. And even if you think something is overweighted or you despise it, like there's several art pieces. Well, I say art with like imaginary air quotes because everybody touts them as art, but I find them kind of nauseating. But when I'm able to apply the tools of artistic critique, at the very least, I can appreciate the expenditure of calories. You know, that person concentrated and did something for a specific length of time to accomplish whatever that drivel is. So, you know, instead of seeing it as utterly as a focus for utter derision, I can at least appreciate that the materials were used purposefully. But there's been a couple examples, like with Henry Moore. His stuff used to make me want to throw up, honestly. And that his reclining figures series, I I couldn't see why so many people love those. And I keep every time I go back and look at them, I try to really observe closely, try to see what's happening, try to figure out what he was doing and trying to share with us. And over time, it's gotten to the point where now I think they're truly remarkable. I think it's amazing, and I love that short video that I have you guys watch was the two art historians looking at it, just describing it and talking about what they think it means. I I really enjoy that. I've seen that video 20 times. Do you know which ones I'm talking about, right? The one video that where
Yeah.
they're okay. I absolutely love that because by the time they're done, you know, 5, 6 minutes later talking about it, their perspective on it is 90 degrees different than what it was originally. How about you, Mallory? Is there something that you utterly despised or you found a total waste of effort that you now at least, you know, like Tanner said, you at least you appreciate the effort that went into it?
Um, I think like teaching art history to my students has helped me and just understanding art history more. Like, for example, frescoes. I was always like, these are considered like really great artworks, but like I couldn't fully appreciate them. But then I like understood the timeline of history and how frescoes are made, the process of those, and how hard it is, how they don't have photo references, they don't really have like the same education like that we have nowadays. And so even just things like that, putting into perspective for majority of art history, especially early art, helps me to appreciate it more because I'm like, these are like the greatest artworks coming out of this time period that we know of. And to me, I'm like, man, they're not that great sometimes. And then just shifting my perspective to like how hard it must be to um, work within the confines of what they were experiencing within history at the time as far as materials and even like subject material. Like I feel like with us we get to choose our subject material a lot of time as long as it's like not a commission or something. But for them it was oftentimes had to be like religious or something, especially historically. And if that wasn't your cup of tea, like if that wasn't your chosen subject, I don't know. It just seems like I'm able to put a better perspective on a lot of artwork. I wish I could do that for my students in the middle school because the only thing they can appreciate is realism, like super high realism. And other than that, they're like, that's not good. So,
Well, I like that observation about cup of tea because if it's not your cup of tea at that time period, you didn't eat.
right.
You know, you didn't have access to medical care. You didn't have access to clothing, and so yeah, very little choice. And I think I love that putting it into context, putting it into historical context as well as cultural context, really helps us to appreciate these things. And it's you know it's never been an issue that artists just didn't know how to represent the human form naturalistically or do photorealism. You know, as a word that couldn't exist until photography, but even in Egyptian tombs, even in cave painting, we can see what we would call today examples of photorealism, highly realistic animals, for example, in some cave paintings, and highly realistic human forms and animals and genre type settings in Egyptian tombs. With the Egyptian figure, we all see that the canonized figure with the triangular chest facing front, and then everything else to the side, and all that kind of weird stuff. That was specifically religious iconography.
Yeah, it's
But
like
when
a
we
style.
look at what's that?
It's just like the style of the time that they were choosing. It's not like they were incapable. It
Right.
was, yeah.
Is we can see several other examples in the same tomb where the artists were commissioned to do genre type images from the owner's estate. Whoever, and you'll see people in perspective. Everything is proportioned, and you see the right part. It looks like a normal human being working in the field, or uh, playing at the river, or catching a duck, or something like that. And then when it switches back to official narrative for the life of the person, then the figures become stilted and canonized again. So the same artist working on the same project, they could still do photorealistic work in Egyptian tombs, but then you can see why they didn't, because of the religious setting and the requirements of the context. So
I've
yeah,
also, sorry, I've
that's
also
fine.
wondered that this might be kind of off topic, but if there's like artwork that wasn't super religious or something from that time period that just wasn't preserved because it wasn't sacred, like not just that time period, but all time periods, or was it like a restriction, kind of like by the authority figures, the king or whatever, like you can't make art unless it's this type of art, or if there was still art being created that wasn't necessarily like religious, it just wasn't preserved because it wasn't worth preserving, kind of. You know
Yeah,
what I'm
or they
saying?
didn't deem it valuable.
Yeah,
Well,
because like the
that's
stuff
really
we
a
have from
fascinating.
Egyptian tombs
Sorry.
is preserved. The stuff we have from Egyptian tombs is preserved because it was worthy of putting in the tomb. So that's the only reason we have it, because it was so. Was there other artwork and stuff that wasn't preserved?
I think that's a really good question, and some of the things that I'm thinking about specifically were these genre style paintings of photorealism done. The only reason they survived from ancient Egypt was because they were a scene in a tomb that the deceased wanted shown.
Um,
And then on either side of them, surrounding him, you see the hieroglyphs, you see the very canonized figure, and then this one little thing, you see three women with ducks at the riverbank, and so you see this photorealistic portrayal of three human forms and the plants around them, and then 18 inches away, it goes back to the religious canon.
wow.
And in Egypt and other cultures as well, when there were records that were not deemed appropriate, important, or in the right narrative, they were destroyed. For example, one of the reasons we know about Hatshepsut, who is probably the single most powerful person in the ancient world, she was a woman who whose son was too young to inherit the throne when her husband died as pharaoh. So while people were still reeling from the death of her husband, she had herself declared a man, and she became the pharaoh. So it shows Queen Hatshepsut, when she's married to her husband as a woman, then at the moment of her husband's death, suddenly she has a full beard and a flat chest. And then while people are still reeling from that, she declares, for this reign only, I, the male pharaoh, will now be a woman. So she was technically, according to the laws of the time, she was technically a cross-dresser. She was then, for the rest of her reign until her son was old enough, she ruled as a woman again. And she was extraordinarily powerful. And then when her son was able to get to power, she was able, but doing that allowed her to avoid the snares of court advisors who were trying to um, turn her son into a puppet pharaoh. And she was also able to avoid getting into alliances and weddings or marriages with people that had no interest in Egypt. And then when her son was old enough to get into power, and with his powerful mom, he was pretty much very independent. As soon as he got into power, or as soon as he was old enough, she declared herself the lifelong priestess and abdicated the throne. And when he got into power, so that everybody would remember him, his mom advised him to remove her from the record, from the historical record. And the reason we know about all that is because all the stones that had this story on it, her son used them as rubble to fill in the walls of the buildings that he built. And when those stones were found in the 90s, they were cataloged and digitized, and then digital imagery was used with a computer to piece it together, and they were finally able to put all these stones in the right order and read the story.
Wow.
So she went really quickly from queen to pharaoh to priestess, and then almost disappeared from the historical record. And then, 3,000 years later, we find out about her because of digital technology. So that somewhere in there was a response to your question. But I think it is true, and then we look at 2,500-year-old work in Palmyra in the Middle East. You get these photorealistic sculptures that are absolutely gorgeous. And that was what people like Michelangelo and Da Vinci used as a model for their work in the Renaissance. So photorealism is not a new thing by any means, but just basically just the term. But most of the artwork that we see, the artist's ability to portray things utterly realistic was curtailed by time, the necessity or the needs that the sculpture or art piece had to fulfill, like what you were talking about earlier, Mallory, and the materials and tools that they had. I don't know if either of you have tried to write on papyrus with a reed pen, but it really sucks. It is hard, and if you have access to a full palette of painting materials and a smooth wall on which to work, then you can do your painting. But like what you were talking about, how hard it is to do a fresco even. And I remember reading somebody's comment about how thoughtless Da Vinci was, because some of his works have been destroyed over time because of his experiments with working in frescoes. Well, he was trying to find out and some techniques to make those last and endure the test of time. And his experiments that worked really worked. And so rather than getting mad at him for ruining his own work in the future, we should be really grateful that he took the risk that he did, along with the other artists. Hey, Kylie, I just saw you turned up. We were yakking for a while. Nothing consequential. We were just waiting for you to show up.
Oh, I just saw the notification on my phone and ran in, so.
Well, what we've talked a little bit about was the quiz so far, where I said that the most common error that people have made is misspelling words like achromatic, monochromatic, and complementary. And we talked a little bit about the final. Have you already seen the final, Kylie?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and the four questions. And Mallory and Tanner both talked a little bit about that. One question I'd like to ask you, Kylie, is what one thing out of this whole class do you think you would take forward with your future work?
Sure. I think there are kind of two things that come to mind. One, the photography practice is really helpful that we've been doing for this class. And then the other is probably what we've kind of been doing while we've been doing the background assignments, where we kind of, analyze which kind of art speaks to us most, and then kind of compare ourselves personally to the artists that created those and to see in what ways we're similar and what ways we're different. I think that was really valuable.
All right, great. It's always interesting to me too. Another question that I'd asked was, I really appreciate that, because if it's something that you can take forward with your into your future practices, that is excellent. Another question I asked was, and is there, and this wasn't on the final, but it's a question that I've put on the final in the past. Both Tanner and Mallory have talked a little bit about it. Is there a piece of artwork where, when you've applied the 4 tools of artistic critique to it, you've completely changed your perspective on it? Mallory talked a little bit about frescoes, and how her art students are only able to respond to photorealism. And Tanner talked about stuff that he saw with the Mona Lisa, which he felt was very overrated. But now he can, at least by applying those tools, he can appreciate that it took considerable purposeful, intentful action to create. So at least, there's some respect there. Is there a particular piece of art, Kylie, that your mind has been changed about because of the tools of artistic critique?
Sure. I think probably when I'm looking at non-objective art, which in the past I haven't been a huge fan of, but looking at the tools of artistic critique, I can see better how a lot of skill has been applied to a lot of those pieces, and maybe come to a place where I find a little bit more value or maybe personal meaning in something I would have otherwise just dismissed.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Whether or not you find personal meaning in it yourself, you can see that the person who made it with intent, right?
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a valuable insight, because I think most of us, when we produce work for somebody else to view other than ourselves, we want there to be at least a little bit of an acknowledgement that they recognize we made an effort. Whether or not they like it is less important than they respect it, like Tanner was saying. And I think that's really good to bring forward. I wanted to thank you, Kylie. I wanted to look at the discussion on ready-mades a little bit, just so that everybody can see what folks have turned in. And I want to talk about that a little bit. Did you guys find that discussion on ready-mades was worthwhile? Or did you think that the ready-made concept is just a waste of energy?
I don't think it was a waste of energy. I think it helps me have a lot more perspective for people like Duchamp, or whatever, how you ever say his name, who just, because I did have to put some thought into it. It's not as random as you think, I feel like. So yeah, it wasn't a waste of time.
All right, excellent. I think that, well, I'll share what I think after. I want to hear the same answer to the same question from Tanner and Kylie, and then I'll share what I think about it. Excellent observations, Mallory. Thank you. Tanner and Kylie, can you respond to that same? Did you learn something from the idea of ready-mades, or did you think come away thinking it's a waste of time?
It was definitely a learning experience, just kind of like how to approach it, where it's like we had like this criteria of what to meet, and I was like, how do you get like a point across with just what seems like a random object? So it felt like rewarding. I don't know if that's the right word, but just like being able to kind of accomplish that, being able to do that was good.
All right, excellent, very good. I like that. How about you, Kylie?
It's a good question. I feel like I'm still kind of on the fence with ready-mades. I feel like sometimes people do it really, really well, and I think it takes a lot of skill and that it communicates an idea. However, I think I still find that it sometimes just misses the mark. I don't know that that it reads as just like a picture of something and not, you know, an art piece with something behind it. Um, but some of them do it really successfully. I'm looking at the discussion right now, and there's one where like there's a remote controller like on the edge of the pool, which is like clearly telling a story, or there's something behind that, right?
Right.
But just like in other pieces I've seen in galleries and stuff that are ready made, um, I don't know, without combining them or doing something more to them. Yeah, I'm not always a super fan.
Are you guys familiar with the work of Do So? He's a Korean, and right now he does a lot of things with combining architecture with silk hangings. So he'll create a structure with just almost transparent silk, and when you see it, you see it. It's almost like this ghostly building. Pretty amazing stuff. But when he started doing things with a lot of ready-mades that he was working with, putting them into a new setting. Like there's one where he made a traditional Korean style coat, but in Korea, every young man is required to be in the military for a certain length of time. And he just started collecting dog tags and had a team that were polishing the dog tags. And this coat is usually shown in a large room, and it's made entirely out of ordinary dog tags, stands about 7 feet tall or whatever in the center of the room. And then the tail of the coat just continues draping down and fills up the entire floor. And it's all these thousands and thousands and thousands of dog tags. His use of ready-mades is by putting it in a slightly different setting like that. He shows us something that becomes intensely profound. You know, whatever you want to get from it, there's so much intent to it that it becomes really powerful. Have you guys heard of Ai Weiwei? He's another person that was on your artist list.
Yes.
Ai Weiwei, okay. I don't know. Do you want to? Would you be comfortable just sharing a little bit about him, just like where he's from and what he's doing now?
So I know I recognize the name. Let's see.
If you don't, that's fine. I can do it.
Okay, yeah. Well, so one of the things he does is he'll use, like, he has one piece where it's several bicycles, and they're kind of lined up, so they make kind of like this geometric pattern, but it's just like, you know, hundreds of bikes that are lined up. He also did like the painted ceramic sunflower seeds, I believe.
Right. Where he
They're all
made
done by hand by
millions of
artists in
sunflower
China,
seeds.
I
Right.
think.
Right. Yep. Yeah, he's a Chinese national, and one of his early pieces. This is really sad. When a disaster that kills a lot of people happens in China, we rarely hear about it in the West. Like mines will explode and trap people inside, and we don't hear about it. One thing that was particularly sad, about 20 years ago, there were several construction companies building schools that were not really well constructed. So when earthquakes hit in central China, these schools collapsed, and the children that were in there died. And the government response was to lie to the parents. And one of the things that got Ai Weiwei kicked out of the country is he found out about 110 school children that had died in one of these collapsed school buildings that the government had specifically lied to their parents about. And he just collected 110 backpacks and displayed them. And they were all children's backpacks, and he just displayed them and didn't make any other comment about it. but the government was so enraged they kicked him out of the country and wouldn't allow him to come back. And that was, yeah.
So I just have a question about like maybe like copyright with ready-mades or something. Like, at what point is it become his artwork and not like the people who created the backpacks, or like whoever made the toilet versus the person who put their name on the toilet and submitted it? Does that?
Yeah, and I think that's really good with his work. When he takes these run-of-the-mill children's backpacks and then puts them on the wall of a museum, then and he's displaying a specific number of them and giving it a title as an artwork, then it becomes something completely different. And the intellectual ownership of the backpack design becomes in the same category as the intellectual ownership of the recipe for the paint that you use. So the ready-made then becomes a function or a part of the art itself. Now, if you didn't change the thing at all, it would be really hard to justify. But the moment you give it a title and present it as art, what is so cool about that as artists is that, at least in the eye of followers on social media and other people paying attention, it becomes your thing. And if you can, if you actually document it and show it as your own work, then there's something called no-cost copyright, where if you can show first publication as an art piece done by you, then whoever owned the original object, it becomes very difficult for them, or who designed it, it becomes very difficult for them to also claim ownership for your artwork. But I think that that's a really good question to ask yourself as you do this. If you're interested in working with ready-mades, ask yourself, how much of this new meaning it comes directly from me, and how lazy am I being? You look at Erica Arendt, she does work with basically candy from people that make cake and frosting and stuff like that for birthday parties. But she puts these together in huge amounts so they become something completely different. They start looking like structures of coral. Now, if somebody asks, I'm sure she'd be happy to tell them, oh yeah, I got the candy from this place. But the object itself is not the candy. The object is her artwork. And there's a number of people like that as well. I think one of my favorite people, you could probably call him a land sculptor, and technically what he's using is ready-made, but Francis Alice, he's from Mexico, and he does things. One of my favorite pieces that he's done is called Faith Moves Mountains, where he had all these volunteers go to a public feature, and he actually got permission to do this, had them each of them use the shovel that they brought, and they actually moved a topographical feature, which was a small mountain. They moved it about a foot. So it was actually had to be re-recorded on maps, and it was just people working, and by their elbow grease, they moved an entire mountain a foot. Now, it objectively, it is a ready-made because the mountain already it was there. But by doing that, he completely transformed the meaning of the piece as well as physically transforming it too. So I think that's a really good question. And there are areas of the world, I'm going to say, I meant countries, but there are areas of the world and there are businesses that we have to be really careful working with that do not care an awful lot about intellectual ownership of our ideas. And I've seen scandals where people have taken famous sculptures and produced unlicensed copies that sold like crazy because they appeared in this or that church's publication. O.A. Stedler is an illustrator from the 19th century who you've seen his image everywhere. And now it's okay because the copyright died years ago. But he actually created an image of Jesus holding a sheep or a lamb, and it became the go-to image for a lot of churches. If you go to American Fork, there are 3 chapels within a 5-mile radius that have an image of that in stained glass. If you go up, I think it's West Temple, you can see a half a dozen churches just within a few blocks on either side of West Temple that have that image in stained glass. Now, so that's something to be mindful of you as you work as an artist. However, I think that when we repurpose it, like giving a narrative to it, it is pretty hard to argue that we're infringing on anybody's intellectual rights to that object, unless we decide not to be honest about it. Like Fran Stowe is the one who does she takes plastic refuse that she rescues from the ocean and packs it in little plastic baggies as souvenirs for people. And she wasn't the original creator, but I think all of us can see that is a very strong art piece just by itself, and it's basically found objects. But yeah, I think that's a good question. I'm sorry, Elizabeth, you're here. I was not paying attention to you. How are you doing? How was your week? Well, if your microphone isn't working, that's fine. We'll go on. But I want to do the screen share, and I just want to scroll through and talk a little bit about our discussion that shows the ready-mades. Okay. So everybody can see this. We see, I think the title of this is Thor's Hammer. Is that right?
Yes.
I think this is one of those things where the hammer obviously was not designed and built by the artist, but by the placement on this particular crack, she had to go out and find this crack in the pavement, place this there, pick the hammer that it's obviously worn, and there is the visual references give us a narrative. What that narrative is explained a little bit, but we can also add to it ourselves. But there is a specific story, and I think you guys can see that in the presentation. And as we go down, we can see other things. It's a very dramatic lighting of a spool, and then we can read what the artist has to say about it. Here's a frying pan and a very atypical setting for it. This cell phone case, again. So all these things, they're specifically lit, specifically photographed for a purpose. And they're no longer just documentary style images that you might see in a print catalog. And I think that's an important thing. When we see these, they are presented not as stereotypical images. I think, Kylie, this is the one that you were talking about, right?
Yeah, it stressed me out and made me smile.
Yeah, I can see that. So I really appreciate these because of the thought that went into it. Even things that look like simple objects develop a specific meaning because of the way that they're presented and the way that people talk about them. So I'm glad to see what people came up with. All right, as we move into the last couple of days, I am working to get everything caught up on grading by tomorrow night so everybody can see where they stand. And I will be putting zeros on everything that was supposed to have been turned that hasn't. And what did I tell you guys about what zeros mean?
It's a reminder to get stuff done.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it. It's a space holder until you get stuff done. Now, several people have had work situations and out of the country situations and other stuff like that have reached out to me and told me their situations, and I've been able to work, I think, with everybody. If you have something that prevents you from getting stuff done as quickly as you want it to, talk to me and let me know, and we'll see what we can do, because I want you guys to be able to finish things and get everything turned in. But I told Tanner that I promised Tanner earlier that we would keep this meeting to a short 3 or 4 hours today, because I know you have other things to do. So, but that is, I'm sorry to disappoint you, Tanner. It's going to be even shorter than that. That's about all I wanted to cover. But I would like each of you guys to ask me a question. If you don't think, if you don't have a question yourself, see if you can ask me a question that you think another student might have who's not here today. So let's hear a question. Do you guys have any questions for me about things as they're going on?
It's not really a question, but it was just with the student SRI thing.
Okay.
With what you uploaded. So that's where you submit the assignment. You were talking about sending out the link, but you can also find it if you just go to like My UVU and then go to students. And then if you go to registration and academics, then class tools, and then rate instructors, that's where you can find where to complete that.
All right, that is excellent. That student SRI thing is, Tanner and I, as other people were tuning in today, we're working on that. That is attached to the final module. It is extra credit if you do that and send me an image, a screenshot of the image that shows that you completed it. You don't send me the actual rating or anything like that. I don't want you to. Those things are supposed to be, what's it called? Anonymous. If you send me the screenshot showing that you completed it, then you do get a 3% boost in your overall grade. So you don't get points for that specifically, but if you complete it, you get a boost in your overall grade. All right? Elizabeth, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just had a couple questions on that. I saw that mine was graded today, but I got 0. So are we supposed to get 0 for now?
You do not get any points for it. The grading is whether or not you completed it. And then at the very end, when I'm doing the grades, that's when I add the percentage to it.
Oh, okay.
So you get an overall percentage, you do not get a point value. So yeah, it will show a 0, but if I graded it, it should show completed.
Okay, yeah, that's what I can see. And then the other question I had was, it mentions a 2% and a 3% on the description of like the assignment or the SRI. So I just wanted to double check on that, if it's 2% or 3%.
Oh, that is a really, I thought I had. Okay, look, I'm looking at the thing right now. Okay, yeah, it does say 2% and then 3%. I'm changing it both to 3%.
Okay, awesome.
Okay.
Those were my questions. Thank you.
Yeah, so it should show 3%, which I probably should just do 2%, but since I got your hopes up, why not? You know. Okay, let's see. I'm going in right now. I just edited it. I'm going in to see if it fixed it. Okay, it did fix it. Okay. All right. Anybody else have any questions? Kylie or Mallory?
I suppose the one that comes to mind. So final day of the semester and to turn stuff in is Friday.
Yeah, Friday at midnight.
Is that right?
If you got,
Okay.
if anybody has any problems meeting that, let me know. All right, but yeah, that's a really good question. And any other questions? All right. Yes, Elizabeth.
Sorry, I had one more question. For the final, do you want a Word document, or is it okay if we do it in the text box in the assignment?
Let's see. I should. If you match the word count, you could do it either way. But let's see. I have it as either a file upload or a text entry. So you can write it as a PDF or a document or whatever, or you can do it inside the text editor itself in Canvas.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, these are really good questions. All right, are you guys good?
Yes.
All right, excellent. All right, it's been really a pleasure to have you guys in my class, and I hope you guys continue to do really well. I know that if you guys are also taking the ethics class, that is a real stressful time, and you have a lot of final projects to get done. So I'm hoping that this class does not add significantly to your stress. I had a friend who taught philosophy at UVU, who taught an ethics class. Can you guess what his biggest problem was in the ethics class with the students? Cheating. I just thought that was funny.
Oh boy.
Yeah, exactly. All right, guys, you have a great week. And if, like I said, if you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, let me know, and we'll do what we can to fix it. All righty?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys. And we will see you later.
Thank you. See ya.
See you later.